by these thieves. These thieves are circumstances, they are people, they are words, and they are things. In the book of Colossians, it is the most Christological book that has ever been recorded by the pen of inspiration. It is not a book so much written to diffuse Gnosticism as it is to show the superiority and the supremacy of Jesus Christ. When you look at the book of Philippians, you see that it is in actuality a runoff on Colossians, because if Jesus is who Paul says he is, then you can understand why Philippians tells you you have joy to know what you'll be able to. And then the book of Philemon shows us how that you can be a physical slave while being spiritually free. And then in the book of Ephesians, what you look at is that you see what God has done in the church. The church is not an afterthought. It is not because of what is called in theology the postponement theory. The postponement theory stipulates that because the Jews rejected Christ and his messiahship, then Jesus ushered in Jesus then ushered in the church age, and he postponed the inauguration of his kingdom till he comes again. Well, like I said, if we crucified him the first time, we shoot him out the head, check that. So basically speaking, what Paul does in the book of Ephesians is that he shows that the church is the eternal purpose of God, that it is not no accident, that it's not because the Jews rejected Jesus. It is simply that God worked out his plan. And what has happened is that in the book of Ephesians, Paul is not dealing with things that he deals with in other books. Probably for the first time, he's able to sit down and think. And I don't mean that sarcastically. I'm simply saying that a lot of his writings were always done under duress. Here now in the book of Ephesians, he goes from persecution to worship. Okay? He goes from historical data to actual reality. And the book of Ephesians, in my estimation, is probably the most relevant book of all of the New Testament, because it deals with body life. And what he does in the first 3 chapters is that he gives us the doctrinal proportions. And then in chapters 4 through 6, he gives the application of all of those things. He uses words that he does not use in other books. And because of the usages of some of these words, then people say that Paul could not have written the book, basically saying that Paul couldn't advance in his knowledge and his usage of words. But I'm here to say that I believe with all of my heart that he wrote the book. I believe that he did not write necessarily to the Ephesians of it. I believe that in Colossians chapter 4, that the church at Laodicea got a letter, which I believe becomes a circular letter. And we have to understand that when those men wrote those books and the churches had them, they did not have to the church act. Those things came after the books were collected. Because Laodicea went into disrepute, then what in antiquity what they would do, if you had a person that had great influence and he became disreputable, they would then erase his name from anything that promoted him. And because the church of Laodicea was the sickest church in the book of Revelation, then what you have is that scholars believe that the name Laodicea was what? Eradicated. And Ephesus was added. And that was a circular letter. And the circular letter means that when you read this letter, then read the letter that I wrote to the what? Laodicea. You don't need to get bent out too far out of shape, because in 1 Corinthians, Paul writes 3 letters to the Corinthians. We got 2. Okay. Well, what happened to the other? I don't know. But I know he wrote what? At least 3 letters. So, and then you have to remember what John writes. That there are many things that God did, or Jesus did, that are not recorded. So there are a lot of things that are out there that we don't know. And so you should not get too bent out of shape when stuff comes up. The Q document, which is a document that theology espouses, actually there is no real historical evidence for it, other than the fact that it's quoted. But nevertheless, in the book of Ephesians, The theme of the book of Ephesians is what God has done in the church. And so what I wanted to do this morning, because we're dealing with theology, I want to give you a working definition of the English word church. Because if you're in something, you ought to know what you are in. And we are looking at a church of today that seemingly has no power. And I'm here to tell you that that's a misnomer of the concept of church. When Jesus said in Matthew 16, upon this rock I will build my church, we need to understand that the word church in English is a different word than the word that Jesus used. When Jesus said, upon this rock I will build my ecclesia, you have to understand that to the Greeks, ecclesia meant one thing, and to the Jews it meant another thing. Nevertheless, within the same boundaries. When the Greeks heard ecclesia, they saw that as a society, a called out what? Body. And that called out body was a free society, and only those who were free could attend the meeting of that society and cast a vote. If you were not free, you could not attend those meetings to cast a vote. Now, you could go to the meeting, but you were not allowed to cast a vote. But so how did they get their freedom? Well, the Roman Empire had over 60 million slaves at its height. And a lot of times, slave owners who were served very loyally by those slaves would grant them their freedom when they got ready to die, and or would allow the slave to buy their freedom. We need to understand that under Roman slavery, the Roman slaves were paid. No. They were paid. Now, they were not paid a whole lot, but they were paid. And they could save their money. And before you go get your theological shotgun, I want you to understand that Mount Bayou was an all-black city right after the Civil War, because those folk had saved their money and bought the property. Well, where did they get the money from? They got paid. Slaves, we saw that in slaves got paid. Now they got paid in very little amounts, but they got paid. So you could buy your freedom, you could be granted your freedom, and or you could run away and get your freedom. If you got caught, your freedom was over. Just like your life was over. Okay? But nevertheless, only those who were free. When Jesus comes into the coast of Caesarea Philippi, he said, I'm going to build my church. Those Greeks had a different understanding of what the Jews did. The Greeks understood that you had to be what? Free in order to be what? Part of the society. Jesus says in John 8:31-32, if the Son of Man shall make you what? Free, you shall be free indeed. So when you stop and you look at what ecclesia meant to the Greeks, it meant freedom. And we need to understand that that's what the Christian life is about. Christian life is about freedom. The Christian can do anything he pleases. Hello. As long as what he does is seeking to please God. Amen? And we need to recognize that a lot of times we allow our freedom to be taken from us because of man-made doctrine and man-made supposition. To the Hebrew, however, the word ecclesia was translated kola, K-H-O-L-A, and that meant a congregation under a sovereign ruler. In this case, Israel is the what? Is the congregation, and Jehovah was the what? The sovereign. And so when Jesus says, I say unto thee that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and I will give unto thee the keys to the kingdom of heaven. That word kingdom actually means what? Sovereignty. It means authority. It means the person that's what? In charge. So when you look at the word, the Hebrew understanding was that here was a what? A congregation. The Greeks said a society. Well, there's no difference between the society and the what? The congregation. As a matter of fact, the word synagogue means congregation. And the synagogue is the precursor of the church. Now, let me show you with you this. What happened on Pentecost was not a surprise. We act like it was a surprise, but it wasn't a surprise because the synagogue was the church in preparation. If you remember when the Babylonians took away in 606, they took away Judah and Benjamin. everything that they did came as a result of being where? In the temple. Now in Babylonian captivity, there's no what? There's no temple. And so now they start the what? The synagogue. And in the synagogue, you have to have at least 10 what? Families. The synagogue became the center of Jewish activity. For instance, in the synagogue, they had a room that was used for people traveling who did not have a place to stay. They could stay in the synagogue. In the synagogue, youth were encouraged to participate. Where? In the synagogue. In the synagogue, men who never led a prayer, who never read the scripture, who never did anything, because in the temple, it was the priest that did all of it. So in the synagogue now you got men who are learning how to what? Read publicly. You got men who are learning how to do what? Pray publicly. And you got men who are doing what? Leading song service, and even getting up and doing what? Delivering an oracle from the law. So the synagogue becomes the what? The precursor of the church. And that's the church in preparation. And so when you come to Pentecost, there was no surprise that Paul, that Lugo recorded in Acts 2:47, and the Lord added to the what? The ecclesia. Okay? So when we look at that, we see that the church was in preparation. What we have is that the Greeks understood it to be a free society. The what? The Hebrews look at it as a congregation under the sovereign rule of God. But the English word church does not come from neither one of those terms. In the translation of words, when you look at the word ecclesia, ecclesia does not translate church. The word that's translated church is the Greek word kurios. And in the etymology of the word, what transpired was that the kurios, they dropped the CH sound and make it K. And so when they looked for the English word to match K, it came up church. And so the word church, the English word church, is in actuality a derivative of the Greek word kurios. Now, what does kurios mean? Lord. It means master. It means king. It means power. Now, here's what the church is if you put all these three things together. And we're talking about theology, so listen to this. What is the church? The church is composed of the what? The free, who are under the master's authority, who have power. The church of Christ should never be looked down upon as a weak society.
Come on now. Yes. Right.
When you put the theology of the words together, the church of my Lord is the strongest entity on the face of the earth. We have made it weak.
Come on now.
You cannot be salt and light. Hello. And act foolish.
That's right.
Listen, we need to understand what light is. In the first century, there were no 40-watt bulbs. What was used to give light was fire. And God says that we are the what? The fire. We are the illuminators. Y'all looking at me like y'all talking to myself. Listen, we need to recognize that you cannot do anything until you get lit up. And the reason no one comes to us is because they don't see no fire in us.
That's right. That's right.
When you set something on fire, it's going to burn, and the more fuel you add to it, the longer it's going to burn. And our basic problem is that we have allowed our torches to go out. Hello. Another thing, salt. The church is salt. I got news for you. I don't care how pretty the salt shaker is. My wife likes expensive stuff in her house. Now, she's a very practical woman, so I'm not trying to picture her as some, heifer who likes all that, money. But she believes in buying quality stuff. That way you only spend it one time.
That's right.
Okay? And she has some beautiful salt shakers. I'm here to tell you what, man. I don't care how pretty the salt shaker is. I don't care how much money you pay for the salt shaker. If you can't get the salt out of that shaker, it ain't no good. And we have put up some beautiful buildings. And the focus still where? In the inside. When if you're going to understand salt, salt can only have power when it comes in contact with that which is different.
That's right.
Salt will kill itself.
Wow.
You put salt in a salt shaker and you never move it, it becomes stagnant.
Wow.
It crystallizes, it gets hard, and it has no propensity or value.
Wow.
So if you put the church in a container, you have just torn its power, its purpose, and its prerogative out of God's theological realm. Beloved, the church is a powerful institution.
Yes. Amen.
And I'm going to say something here, and I know how we are. The church don't save nobody. The church is composed of those who have been saved. And because they have been saved, then God has predestinated that those in Christ become his what? Adopted sons. So spiritual adoption is what the church is all about. Your job and my job is to have power. Let me show you how much power we got. You all got some Bibles here? Turn to Acts, turn to John 20 and 20. I just have Bible study for me. John 20 and verse 20. John 20 and 20. Someone start reading for me.
And when he had so said,
Look at
he
this.
showed unto them his hands and his side. Then were the disciples glad when they saw the Lord.
Hold it right there. You know what the problem in the church that makes us weak? Is we're trying to get sad folk to do what only glad folk can do. When the disciples saw the Lord, then were they made what? Glad. It was after they were made glad that Jesus said, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. You cannot get sad folk who ain't never seen the Lord through the eye of faith, who are still in their sadness, to go do what only glad folk can do. And so one of our basic problems is that we have robbed the church of its joy. You cannot get sad folk to do what God intended joyous people to do. Now, if we keep reading, notice the power that Jesus gives to the church.
Then said Jesus to them again.
Then said Jesus to them again, peace be unto
As
you.
my Father has sent me.
Now, there's a great commission. As the Father has what? Sent me, even so what? I send you. Okay? So that's the Great Commission. That's Matthew 28, Mark 16, Luke 24. Okay? Act 1. That's the Great what? Commission. As the Father has sent me, so I'm what? Sending you. He did not send sad folk. He did not send sad folk. The reason the church is not growing ain't got nothing to do with our Bible understanding. It has to do with our personality. Who wants to join something that looks like it's been sucking spaghetti out of a Coke bottle?
Wow.
Who wants to be part of anything that's dead? Let me tell you something. I don't care what you think. This world, for all its grandeur, for all its beauty, is nothing but a cemetery.
Wow.
Don't fall in love with the scenery. It's a cemetery. Everything in this world dies. It's one gigantic cemetery. This world is not your natural environment. That's why you die.
And when he had said this,
And now I want you to look at this. When he had said this,
he breathed on them.
he breathed on
And
them
saith unto them,
and saith unto them,
receive ye the Holy
"Oh
Ghost.
Lord, we don't want to mess with people's understanding of Acts 2 on that. Keep reading.
Whosoever sins you remit,
Listen to the power you got.
they are remitted.
Whosoever sins you what? Remit. If the question is, how do I remit people's sins? Well, look at how the apostles remitted the people's sins. They preached the gospel. They taught the people. So the reason the church is not growing is because we've lost our joy and we stopped teaching. Because when you don't have no joy, you can't teach. Read.
And whosoever sins you retain.
Now look at, and whosoever sins you what? Retain. They are what? They are retained. If I don't preach the word of God, then I'm guilty of people losing their souls because their sins have not been remitted. And so the church has power. You got the power to send people to heaven or the power to send them to hell. That's why the church is not an impotent society. We don't even realize how potent we are. God never intended for the church to be weak. Even though he knows we're going to have what? Weak members. He never intended for the influence of the church to be weak. How in heaven's name can the world come to salvation if the church does not know it's saved? Let me tell you something. Ephesians is written to show the church that the world is disunified. And that the way that you're going to win the world is to present a unified opportunity for the church, for the world to become united. And so when you look at the church from the theological perspective, you are looking at a family of strength, ability, and power. Adam and Eve messed up the first family. And here's what God is saying to us in the second family. I ain't gonna let y'all mess up this one. I'm gonna give you everything you need for life and godliness. Therefore, I want you to what? Go and take this message to them. The power of the church is new blood. You want to keep stuff down? Keep baptizing folk and training them. And whenever one person that is working in one area messes up, move him out of the way and put someone else in there. Yeah. You should never allow members of the church to hold the church hostage. I've been here since my daddy laid the first brick. Well, we're glad it's time to lay another brick. And we placate too many members. We try to, listen, let me tell you something. 11%, I found out the other night that 11% of the millennials don't believe in the Bible. Yet every ministry that I've looked at seeks to minister to the millennium. They don't even believe the Bible. Anyway, theologically speaking.
11% don't believe or 11% believe?
11% believe. But let's look at this. Theologically speaking, the church is not a weak entity in the mind of whom? God. It's become non-relevant because the church has made itself non-relevant. But God intended for the church to be what? A magnet that attracts. He said, if I be lifted up, I will what? Draw to me. So the church, from that perspective, from the theological perspective, is more than just a gathering on Sunday. Let me tell you something about one church. You will never convince anybody that there's one church until you start living like there's one church. You cannot convince people that our message is the right message when we ourselves don't believe the message. Let me tell you something. The church is an exclusive society. The mere fact that we believe that there's the one gospel and that the Bible is right makes us exclusive. Whether you like it or not, you are an exclusive society. And the thing about exclusivity is that you got to have some backbone. You cannot be exclusive and be a weakling. And so, in spite of everything, as much as open as I am, I believe with all of my heart that there's only one, and that's exclusive. And I don't care how much theological hop, skip, and jump you do. When you end up with it, you still got it. So that's the theological component of the what? The church. And so what we need to recognize is that church is not just some fly-by-night postponement. The second word that I wanted to share with you this morning was a word that we seldom don't look at, but it's found in Ephesians chapter 4 and verse number 1 and 2. I, therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that you walk worthy of the vocation wherein you call. The word worthy from the theological perspective means balance. Balance. We need to recognize that if the church is going to impact the world, we have to have some balance in our lives. We got to have balance between what the Bible teaches and what we practice. We need to understand the theology of what the Bible teaches and the application of that theology. And so, if you believe that there's one church, you got to live like there's what? One church. If you believe that Jesus is your master, you got to live like you're what? Like you're a slave. Hello? You know, 1 Corinthians 4, Paul said that it is required moreover in what? In a servant that he be found unfaithful. The word servant there means what? Bond slave. For all the niceties that we think we are, we're nothing but slaves. And here's the power of slavery. There's no ranks among slaves. I don't care where you are in the slavery chain, the bottom line is you're still a slave. And you might be in the master's house or in the field house, but guess what? You're still a slave. And therefore there are no what? No ranks among slaves. Now, Paul said that you walk what? Worthy, balanced. We need to give our people a balanced approach to Christianity. We need to learn how to balance what we teach that we must what? Believe, and how we put into practice that